Welcome to the ModernizeOrdie podcast, CFML News Edition, where we keep you up to date with everything going on in the ColdFusion community. We'll share the latest news on events, releases to engines, frameworks, libraries, and tools, as well as spotlighting quality content from the community. Welcome to the ModernizeOrdie CFML News Edition podcast. It's November 2nd, and it's episode 124. Unfortunately, today I've lost my co-host. So, we're running auditions for a new co-host, Ortus, but everyone else has previous commitments and they can't make it. But we wanted to bring you some great news, so I'm here anyway. So, sorry for those watching, just get me. But I get another cool shirt to show off, DockerCon. So, ran out of Hacktoberfest shirts, so I'm waiting for my new one to be sent in the mail. So, I'll wear that when I get it. Okay, everybody, let's get started, and we're going to start by thanking our sponsor, Ortus Solutions. So Ortus Solutions obviously does a lot of things for the community. ColdBox, CommandBox, ForgeBox, TestBox. All these are open source projects that we're bringing out there. Well, I guess ForgeBox not open source, but the community can use it. But all these projects, including this podcast, are things that Ortus does for the community. And so if you want to say thank you back to Ortus for doing these projects and supporting them, so we have a few ways you can do that. So one of the easiest ways and free is to just like and subscribe to our videos on YouTube. Also, you can basically sign up to the podcast. So if you're listening in a podcast player, please subscribe there and give us a rating as well. That'd be great. We also have CFCasts accounts. So if you can sign up for a free or paid account on CFCasts, you can check out the great content releasing every week, and we tell you a little bit about that every week on the podcast. So check that out because we have content all the time. And then also we have a couple of books out there. The latest book from Ortus is 102 ColdBox HMVC Quick Tips and Tricks on Gumroad, and you can purchase that one as well. Now, another way you can give back and support is actually direct financial support, and you can do that with Patreon. So at Patreon right now, we have 37 Patreons providing 93% of the funds for this podcast. So we're almost 100% supported just from you Patreon supporters. So that's really awesome to see. And if you go to patreon.com/OrtusSolutions, you can check out those packages and find one that works for you. We do have annual memberships now where you save 10%. So you can sign up whenever you'd like for an annual membership. And we'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end of the show, and we'll give you some of the perks too for being a Patreon member. Okay, let's get into the news. So first up, CFML Spreadsheet 3.1 is released. So we've been talking about this one quite a lot lately, and so that one is just released into 3.1. It supports the latest POI 5.10 and has some minor fixes and updates. And we actually have a blog post from Julian about the change and everything, so we'll talk about that in the blog post section. We have Adobe one-day workshop for Adobe ColdFusion with Damien, I always say his name right, Broinrux. I really got to see how to pronounce his name. Maybe I should show up to the workshop just to learn how to say his name. But that is going to be November 10th, so next week, and it's going to be Central European time, so check that out. You can find the link in the chat if you're watching live, and if you're if you're not watching live, you can check it out. It'll be in the show notes. Okay. So next up, we have a new Online CF Meetup scheduled for this week, so November 4th. It's going to be with Charlie Arehart, and so Charlie's actually going to be hosting and presenting, which is double duty for him, but he's going to be talking about migrating apps to ColdFusion 2021 from earlier versions. So he's obviously done previous talks about migrating settings and everything, so he's going to focus more on a lot of other things. So basically looking for how to upgrade from the previous year or previous years, and so that'll be a great one. I know Ben Nadell was talking about upgrading from ColdFusion 10 to even ColdFusion 2021. So Ben, if you're listening, you want to go check out that webinar there with Charlie. Might be good news. Okay, so next up we have an In Case You Missed It. So last week on the Online CF Meetup, they had Brad Wood talking about LaunchDarkly. So that feature flag management software It's pretty slick. The recording's available on YouTube already if you want to go check it out. But it's not just feature flags. LaunchDarkly has a ton of other features, a whole marketing suite, basically. And so Brad dives into a little deeper than that. So it sounds like a good session, and yeah, definitely worth checking out. It's on my watch list already. Okay, next up, we do have an Ortus webinar planned for November. Right now, we're just getting all the information ready for you, but it's going to be Javier Quintero. He's going to be speaking about ForgeBox Business. So, ForgeBox Business is a new release that we announced into the box, and so Javi's going to go through a little more details, dive a little deeper, and sort of give you the rundown on what ForgeBox Business is and all the different pieces that make it so great. So, we'll have the registration link coming up soon. But expect that later in the month. We'll have to schedule it around Thanksgiving, obviously. So we'll give that date as soon as we have finalized it. Okay. So next up, we actually have a couple of tweets that I want to talk about. But I thought with the Halloween stuff, I thought we could do a CB Wire is alive. Yep, CB Wire is a project that Grant Copley talked about into the box. It's one of the new ColdBox and LiveWire. Basically, I guess it's like a mini framework, but it's basically a new little tool, and it's basically catching up on all the things that everyone's doing in LiveWire and all the other languages. And Grant's done a lot of good work, and it's looking really awesome. I did watch his session at Into the Box, so it was great to get an understanding, and it's pretty slick what you can do. So I definitely recommend checking the ITB video out on CFCasts if you have access to that. But here's a couple of tweets, and I'm actually going to share them because I'll share my screen here. So if those of you guys done view and whatnot, you'll see some of these types of things where you've got, you know, loading.attribute equals disabled, wire click. So a lot of the similar stuff where you have loading.delay. And so all these little things, you know, sort of adding in, it's pretty slick. The doxy's got flushed out really nicely, but I really like how it's a mixture of sort of normal ColdBox stuff with almost view-like work, and it's all API based. It's weird. It's like a good combination of everything. And so you guys, if you're not looking for direct, you know, Vue.js front ends and everything, like this might be a great little add-in. So definitely check that out. But he's got a couple tweets out there talking about how he's got auto logging now with some components, and then, you know, little things like that. So he's sort of doing like a little hints and tips on Twitter. So go follow him on Twitter and check that out, and check out the project, CB Wire. Okay. So we have that for our news section. So next up, we're going to start talking about CFCasts. So CFCasts is our online video delivery service, I guess you would say. So we have a lot of great content on there. We have English and Spanish content, and we just finished this week releasing the last videos from Quick. So we have the last 2 exercises released, and so up and running with Quick. That whole entire workshop, the 2-day workshop, is now completely released and available up on CFCasts for you to watch. We also released the Quick Building APIs extended version that I did at the Ortus webinar just recently. So that is available up there, and that one is a free video, just so you know. So you don't have to pay, just sign up and you'll be able to watch that video. So those 3 videos released this week, and coming up this next week, we have a whole bunch of new content, and this new content is going to be some recordings in Spanish. So Spanish speakers, we're going to be releasing some university classes, and they include some Zero to Hero content and more. So if you're, I know a lot of people are really interested in the Spanish content, so you can check that out, and that's available on cfcast.com. So usually check, I think they usually come out either Wednesday or Thursday for our new content every week for CFCast. So keep an eye out for that, and away we go. Okay. Next up, we have conferences, and this week we have Microsoft Ignite. So that's going on right now. It's November 2nd through the 4th. And if you check out the screen, you can basically register right on the site here. And I wonder if they have live video right now. Let's see if it's going to load here.
Azure's database services offer a choice of
They sure do. You can hear that right there. Sorry for the loud volume, everybody. But yeah, the videos are live right now. So if you guys want to check it out after the podcast, because I'm more important, you can go do that. And you can just start watching. If you want to join the chat, you register and get in there. So check that out. Microsoft Ignite. And again, it's talking more about business applications and security, but it can always be relevant to what we're working on. Next up, we have DigitalOcean Deploy, and that's going to be November 16th through the 17th. And that conference is obviously focusing on a lot of the deploying. They're doing some containerization and everything. And if we view the agenda here, we'll see some of the type of content they have available. So Kubernetes, scalable virtual classrooms, scaling app platform on Kubernetes, bootstrapping to production-ready cluster with DigitalOcean's Kubernetes starter kit. So a lot of Kubernetes stuff. There's some blockchain thrown in there, some small business, cloud reporting as well. So some interesting content there. So that is going to be, as I mentioned, November 16th through 17th, virtual conference. Register at deploy.digitalocean.com. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to keep up posting these links in the chat as we go. And then next up after that, we have AWS reInvent. So AWS is basically premier conference. And for those watching at home, or remember from last year, that was actually like a 3-week conference. So this year it's going to be November 29th through the 3rd. It's in Las Vegas. And if you want to attend in person, tickets are $17.99, and they do offer virtual free tickets as well, so if you want to just check it out. And so that there is November 9th through the 3rd, and if you want to go sign up, the website's available at reinvent.awsevents.com, and go register now. We also have another conference. This one's Postgres Build, which is a European conference, but I've been doing a lot more Postgres lately, so I'm really interested in seeing what they have there. Postgres Build is going to be online and free. It's November 30th through the 1st, and they have some good content, including last year's content, available to watch on the site. So if you guys are not sure if you want to sign up or not, go check out previous year's content. Should be good stuff. Okay, now we're back to some Cold Fusion conferences. So later on this month, actually next month, so a month away now, we have Into the Box LATAM 2021. Due to the COVID circumstances, we did have to go virtual again. We were hoping for an in-person, but that's just not possible right now. So we're going to have speakers from El Salvador and all over the world present on the latest web and mobile technologies in Latin America. It's going to be completely free, so you definitely want to check that out. And we have a pretty website all up and running, and thanks to Google Translate, I can even read what's on it. But if we check this out here, I go to English. Now I can see. So, free virtual conference, Thursday the 2nd and Friday the 3rd of December. And again, no fees. We'll be announcing all the speakers here very soon, so check back, and obviously we'll keep track on the podcast as well as we announce those. So 1 month away, so the countdown is on. Again, in December, we have one more conference that's on our list here. Adobe Cold Fusion CFSummit at 2021 is going to be live, free, and online, so you can register for free at cfsummit.vconfix.com. So we'll share the link because it's really hard to say and spell. But that is a great conference. They got a lot of good content up there already, so you definitely want to check that out. And then they've got some announcements about the speaker, so let's go check out the site for those watching, and we can find out a little bit more about the keynote speaker too. So they've brought a new speaker in from outside of the Cold Fusion community. And you see a lot of the familiar faces in here as well. So they're doing a little more front-end UI mobile development. They've even got some Node stuff in there, which Brad is like, why are they going to be talking about static site generation? Like, we could do that in Cold Fusion. But they will. But the keynote speaker this year is going to be Ashley Willis, developer relations for Microsoft Azure, and she's a certified Google Dev expert. And she's dedicated to working with open source community. So this will be good to find out a little bit more about it and the future of DevRel, so developer relations. And yeah, this job is getting more popular, and it'd be nice to sort of hear a little bit more about it and maybe the inside story. So pretty cool. So we'll mark that on your calendar, everybody. That is December 7th and 8th. It is virtual. It's got 2 tracks, I believe. So 2 days, 2 tracks. A lot of good content there. Okay, last conference, I did lie. We have one more. So we have JConf Dev. So it's a Java conference. It's now going to be a free virtual event. They had to change theirs from in-person to virtual as well. And that is December 9th. So you can sign up at 2021.jconf.dev, and I'll put that in the chat as well. But for those watching here, you can see their site up here. So Deep Dish Java, I guess it's supposed to be in Chicago, but it's going virtual now. So they have 5 tracks, so 50 sessions. Wow. So that's open and free. So got to be a lot of good content in here. There's got to be something. Migrating to Java 17, no, don't do it. But the rest of it you guys can check out. But yeah, so it's kind of interesting. The Eclipse Adoptium and Adopt OpenJDK Ask Me Anything. That should be a good session. I know Brad's probably got a few questions. He's been working with them to build out all the JDK options in command box. But there's some good content there. So that's our list of conferences up and coming for the CFML and related communities. So we got a lot of great stuff there. And remember, conf.tech is a great place to go check out even more. Okay, so next up, we have blogs, tweets, and videos of the week. So first up, we have one from Charlie Arehart. So he's talking about Fusion Reactor 8.7.4 release. And some of the big things on there is that now it tracks JDBC time and more on the request list pages. So that's like the big thing. And we already got a tweet today because I retweeted this. They responded to me too. But they wanted to know, didn't it already do that? And so basically, yes, they did. But they put it on the list pages now. Before, you'd have to go and look through the JDBC options and find the request and then look at the time and everything. But it's on the request list pages, which just makes it really handy to be able to get that from a top level. It's all at your fingertips and you can compare more easily. Before, you'd have to click on a post, go in, find it, look at it, and then go back out to the next one, click on it and see what it was. So now you'll see the total time, as we can see in a screenshot here. You'll see the total time taken, and then you'll see a little bit more about the database seconds, and and so that really helps. You can sort of see what, comparatively what's taking up the time, because sometimes it makes a big difference. So Charlie talked about the tracking time, the HTTP time, etc. on the request list pages, and then other helpful improvements. And this was a big one for me. The SQL that is tracked, now you can increase the length. So there's a setting in there that you can go change, because I don't know how many times I was dealing with some really crazy SQL and it got chopped off. Okay, and Charlie's just explained the service time, the service milliseconds is for HTTP calls, etc. So that's good. That's what I was assuming, but I don't want to make a fool of myself, Charlie. So thanks for chiming in and keeping me on spot. And then at the bottom, obviously, talks about how to get the update. So when you log in, you'll see if you're 8.1, the top banner should tell you there's an update. You can get the downloads page. If you have command box, the Fusion Reactor one updates automatically. But he has a post here on keeping it updated, so definitely should keep on top of that. There's a lot of great stuff coming out all the time, so it's nice to have it updated. Okay, so the SQL length, the ability to control the length is not new, but they're pointing out how you can change it. Okay, that makes more sense. See, Charlie, like if it wasn't obvious to me, I'd never know it was there. So if they make it easier to see that, that's a good thing. So yeah, especially if you're doing ORM. ORM generates a lot of SQL because it gives everything strange aliases to make it, unique. And when it does that, it generates a lot of SQL. So this should be better to be able to give that there. So very cool. So great blog posts. Again, Fusion Reactor is great. If you have it, update it and use all the new features. Okay, next up we have one from Julian. And as I mentioned earlier, this is Julian talking about how Lucy Spreadsheet is now Spreadsheet CFML. So he sort of gives like the history of it was born out of his frustration 7 years ago because it was so hard to get spreadsheet stuff working in Raylo. And then of course Raylo became Lucy. And then not long after the release he started adding ColdFusion support. And everyone's like, why would you want to do that? But he explains it's like a lot of times cross-platform compatibility is really important for people, especially with people like Preside, you know, that they have to run on either engine. So it just made sense to start adding more and more. And so, you know, so he talks about the history, and he does apologize for the ForgeBox stuff. And we've mentioned here before, he actually changed the repo on GitHub, and it had all the redirects set up so everything would keep working. But on ForgeBox, it didn't. You know, it didn't warn him, and we don't have all the automatic redirecting set up on that. So we've improved our process. So, you know, a couple of builds were broken because the package name disappeared, and everyone was trying to use the old package name. So we've made it now. So basically, if you want to change the name, it'll sort of archive the old version, and you can set up a new one with a new name, and that's what he has. So you can get the old name or the new name, and Spreadsheet CFML is the new one here. So the original package is there for any 2x stuff you have. But good to see a blog post sort of, you know, given the history of it too. So I enjoyed that one. Okay, we have a few from Ben Nadal. So this first one was an interesting one, and I've got a story to share about this too, because in his tweet he was talking about how, you know, long story short, it just taught him that he doesn't know too much about Docker. And so in his response to his tweet, I'm like, well, that's the beauty of abstraction, right? Because when abstraction works properly and everything's working, it's great because you get a black box and you don't have to worry about it. Everything just works. You don't need to know any details or anything else. It just works. The problem with that when you abstract something away in a black box is when something goes wrong, it's a pain in the butt to try and figure out what's going on, how do I fix it, or whatnot. So that's the problem when you start doing abstraction. So what Ben was doing was basically he was updating locally. He was using command box Docker image for Adobe ColdFusion 2018, and so when he updated to the version he was going to be using, I think it was because of his host was updating. Then he had all these weird issues where the local date time cannot be converted to a date error in ColdFusion. And so eventually, he said after 4 hours down the rabbit hole, he finally figured out that it was because the JDBC version, the MySQL connector version 8.0.23, is incompatible with Adobe ColdFusion. So he had to figure out how to backdate it to 8.0.22. And that was a big problem. I would show you the site for those watching, but Ben must be updating his website right now. So I can't show you that there. So no pretty pictures of Ben's website today. But it's a good blog post, so I definitely check that out. It even has a little Docker script to show you how to remove the other driver and add this new one back in. So I'm not sure if that's something that we've updated. Brad, if you're listening, we should check that out too. Oh, and Charlie reminded me I'm not sharing the links again. See, that's why I usually have co-hosts for. They're in charge of the links while I talk too much. But I will do that right now. Sorry, Charlie. So, okay. And then next up, we have another one from Ben. And so the next one here, he's actually looking at preparing his blog for some love because he's been working on that since MX7, basically. So he started his blog on MX7 and he slowly updated, and I think he's hosting with Hostik right now. And the cool thing about that is they're updating, and he's actually going to go all the way from CF10, I think he's on, because he's opted to update, and they were going to shift them to 2018, but they're actually going to move them all the way to CF 2021, looking at some of the comments there. Okay, Ben's site is back up, so I can show you this one. But this one is really cool because it's basically he's evaluating all the different things that he's going to do when he migrates from ColdFusion 10 to ColdFusion 2018. So I like this because he basically goes over every new thing in Adobe CF 11, 16, 18, and then he's going to update it to 2021. So all the things he's actually wanted to do, and sort of how he's done it. And most of these things he's already using in some way, shape, or form, but there are better or slicker ways to do it. And so like get safe HTML, for example. Basically this is using anti-SAMI from OWASP, but he's already doing that from a jar file on the fly. So now we can basically not have to worry about loading that jar file and just handle it with get safe HTML. Alvis operator, and he actually mentions the podcast because Brad is always talking about how the Alvis operator in Adobe has some issues. And yeah, it's just really nice to go through. He talks about member functions, proper case key preservation, full support for Cold Fusion tags and script. So he's talked about all these different ways that you can do that, which is pretty neat, including custom tags, which is very cool. Query execute stuff, built-in functions as first-class citizens. You can pass the function references around, is pretty nice too. Array methods like map, reduce, and struct map, etc. And yeah, and so this blog post is just perfect. If you were trying to see what's really cool in the different versions, this is really good. And basically this here is like a nice little sort of guide of all the things you may want to think about updating in your code. But as Charlie mentioned, his migration post will basically talk about all the things that might break. So Ben's got all the cool things you may want to update and change to use because they're cool. Charlie's webinar is going to be basically all the things you got to watch out for. So yeah. So hopefully he'll come back in and do this here. And he said as he was doing this here, CF Docs has a features improvement by version page, which is pretty cool. And he talks about Charlie has all this stuff, and you're normally in your hidden gems talks, whatever. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And so Charlie's got all those hidden gems talks up on the Online CF Meetup or on previous CF Summits as well. So, but yeah, I really like this blog post. Like, if you guys are looking for features and when they came out, because I always have trouble remembering it, that's a really good blog post. So, very cool. Thanks for that, Ben. Okay, next up, Ben talks about managing shared secret token rotation across systems in Lucy CFML. And so there's a couple of blog posts here, but basically talking about doing things like CF tasks and scheduled tasks and all these little things, and they usually communicate between different systems. And so he sort of looks at how to best do that. Okay, so this one here, he talks about how we have a shared secret, and a lot of times people just put it straight in their code, right? Hopefully you're not putting that up on GitHub publicly, but even if you do that, you have your code and these passwords. So one of the things he also talked about here is like a lot of times if you have to rotate tokens at different times, or if you had done them, it's hard to like roll them all out at the same time. You roll out a new system password for one, and it breaks everywhere, and you got to go update all those sites and deploy them. And so this is building on top of his podcast from Working Code, talking about secret management versus premature optimization. And so I thought it was really good, talking about using environment variables or whatever. Basically, having a secret where, can you actually read it? Because if you can read it, it's probably not a secret. So secrets are usually you can create them and you can overwrite them, but you can't see them or or do anything like that. So he works through, he even creates a couple little things in here. So he's using different tokens, talks about the sort of the process from going from version 3 to version 4 tokens. And he has a little function down here. I think, where's his ENV thing? He has an ENV function here somewhere. There we go. So basically you can ask for an environment variable, and then the server will get it out of the system environment and pull it. If not, it gives you a default. And so that's an empty string here, and then here if there's a fallback value, it'll use that if you want to pass it in. So it was a cool little post, and then as I mentioned, right after that he had another post following it up, and the second one talked about using it with securing Cold Fusion scheduled tasks in a Docker container. And so this one was pretty neat too. And he goes even further than just changing the password and making it an environment variable, which is a good start. He even did some locking down where, since you're in Docker, you can actually hit the server with 127.0.0.1, And so basically, if you're getting a request from somewhere else, you know that it's not actually the scheduled task, so you can actually block it. So he did mention he's not a security expert, disclaimer, but I thought it was pretty neat how he walked through this process. Just little things like he had a Docker container set up with Nginx in front of it, which was port 80, tying through to whichever server he's using, 8500 or 8888, depending on if you're using Lucy or Adobe and what versions. But yeah, he walks through the whole process. So this is kind of a neat idea for how to run your little scheduled tasks, how to use the task password environment variable, and then basically have some security checking for that. So it was pretty neat. I thought it was kind of nice. So in here you'll see that he starts to do some checking, like if the remote address is not 127.0.0.1, then you'll redirect, or you'll abort saying incorrect address. And if it's not the right port that you're hitting, then give it another error for that. And so it's kind of neat how he basically just locked it down. So cool. Okay, what was the last one I posted? Oh man, sorry, I get distracted with these. So much good stuff. So next up we have, I think, one more from Ben, if I remember right. Let's see. Actually, no, this wasn't, sorry everybody, but this was basically a little tweet that was sent out, and I thought it was kind of interesting because it mixed up a whole bunch of different things, and long story short, it was about a mind-blowing week. And so this mind-blowing week started off with them saying they're watching Adobe Max highlights projects that he works on, Adobe stock, listening to commentary from ColdFusion's Ben Forder, and then dovetailing to the CFML podcast with me and Brad. And then he finally realized that Selenium 4 is being released. So it was pretty cool that they started with Adobe Max and they somehow got into our podcast after hearing from Ben Forder. So pretty cool to get mentioned like that. But yeah, there was some pretty cool stuff out on Adobe Max last week. So for those who didn't see, I think Photoshop now has an online web version, which is pretty neat. So now you don't have to install it anymore. You can just use it online. I think it's through the cloud system too. So, trying to go smarter. Now people can do stuff, on tablets and phones that you couldn't do before because you got even more power. I know that everyone's all excited about putting VS Code through GitHub onto their iPads too, because now their iPads are actually usable. Stuff like that. So we're definitely going more web friendly these days for sure. So I thought it was kind of cool to get a shout out to the blog post, especially when Adobe Max is mentioned, because there's thousands and thousands of people checking that out. So very cool. Okay, that's that for blogs, tweets, and videos of the week. Thanks everybody for sharing. Next up, we have Get CFML Jobs with Find Jobs. So let me share my screen for those watching. You'll see we have 5 new jobs this week, I think. Yep. So we have a quality assurance engineer with ColdFusion knowledge, a remote job there. We also have a web developer in Denver, Colorado. We have an HTML ColdFusion developer at Stalford Sways, or Keys, and that's in the United Kingdom. We also have a couple of positions. We have a ColdFusion developer in Texas. We have a ColdFusion developer in California. So about 5 new jobs listed there. So if you guys are looking for a job, getcfmljobs.com is great. Follow them on Twitter. Post a new job if you want to, completely free, or out on their site. And share with anyone else that you know is looking for jobs. Okay. Next up, we have our ForgeBox module of the week. Oh my gosh. Well, I have to update my Patreon list because we just had a new supporter, like $500+ a month. Crazy. So let's see if I can get that name so I can share that before the end of the episode. That's pretty crazy. Sorry, a little alert just went off. Okay, ForgeBox module of the week. So that is a new one this week. We're working on Google ReCAPTCHA, and we're going to be looking at version 3.0. So there's a new one out, ReCAPTCHA 3.0, which is smart. Apparently, it's using AI, so you don't have to click that little box, I'm not a robot anymore. Apparently, this version is so smart that just the way you interact with a page, just the way you fill out the form, is enough for it to figure out, are you a robot or not? And so this ReCAPTCHA module was built by Javier Quintero from Ortus Solutions. It was working on a client and set it up. So you can go and get your keys, and remember, it's part of Google's ReCAPTCHA API, and it's free. So check that out. Really cool, and it's really easy to set up. You basically just need to put your keys. So if you're using ColdBox, module settings, just go in your ColdBox CFC, put in your secret key and your public key, and then to render it out, you can use this simple render view code like this, and that will render it out for you. It is invisible, which is really neat. I know those other ones are kind of ugly, and people had to try and make it work, and there was all sorts of weird issues, but it looks like they simplified it and made it easier. So there's a callback function in here, but basically that's it. So pretty neat. So that is our ForgeBox module of the week. So thanks, Javi, for sharing that one with everybody. I know that I've had to code up some of the older versions, and they weren't much fun. So plug and play sounds good to me. Okay, so let me share that one for everybody. And then next up, we have our VS Code hint, tip, and trick of the week. And this week, we're going to be looking at one that I thought we'd covered, but we haven't. It's called SQLTools. So SQLTools is a pretty cool little suite of tools, actually, for working with database management. So apparently it's database management done right. The Connection Explorer, Query Runner, IntelliSense, Bookmarks, Query History feel like a database hero. So it's pretty neat. It does have quite a few features. So it's got a beautifier formatter, which I always have to go online and find a tool. So that's pretty cool. We got a Query Runner, History, and Bookmarks. Got a Connection Explorer and a query generator for just inserts only at this time. But you can check out their features and documentation here, which we're going to do because it's pretty impressive too. So they have official drivers for a lot of different database packages. So official drivers for all of these, which is neat. Postgres, MySQL, Microsoft SQL Azure, and Redshifts even on there, which is nice. But then they have additional drivers too. So there's a few here, some other maintainers for Oracle, etc. So if you really want to use them, you can. But looking at the documentation, it's pretty detailed. They've got lots of features. They've got all the information on the drivers, settings, how to contribute, etc. So I just thought it was pretty neat that you've got bookmarks set up here. You've got the code lens too, so you can transforming your code and formatting and everything. So it's some pretty cool stuff. But executing right in line is pretty neat. And you can do the history as well, so from the command palette. So pretty cool. So that is our VS Code hint, tip, and trick of the week. So SQLTools, and it looks like Matheus has almost 1.3 million installs on this too. So it's got a pretty good user base so far. So I definitely recommend you guys go and check that out. So SQLTools. And if you guys have any other VS Code hints and tips and tricks that you want me to share with everybody, please let me know. We've had a few years of this podcast, and we've covered a lot of great things, but I'm sure there's a few out there that we haven't covered, and you guys can maybe share, and that'll give us great content. So we'd appreciate you giving us that out, make our job easier, and then share some of the cool stuff that you like about VS Code. Okay. So next up on our list, we have our Patreon supporters. So, as I mentioned, apparently we have a brand new supporter who just upgraded to Emerald. So that's big. Basically, he'll be, added into our podcast. Just so you know, certain perks are only available once you hit a certain range. But right now, we read everybody's name because we want to give everyone some some credit here. But usually the ones at the top of the list are the higher contributors, but we want to give everyone some limelight. But this list keeps getting bigger. It's taking more and more time, and I'm running out of breath, so we'll have to eventually cut back and just cover those at higher packages. But we try and give love to everybody right now. So if you want, you can follow us on our Patreon levels. So patreon.com/Ortus Solutions. You can see a lot of different levels here. So we have a box supporter at 10, and then at bronze you get a few extra perks. So you get a free ForgeBox Pro subscription. You get a paid access to CFCasts, and so that's if you hit the $50 per month bronze supporter. So if you add these two memberships up, it's basically the same thing. And then we've got more options here, so you get discounts on things if you get up to the silver supporter. But we just got an emerald supporter sign up, so I'm pretty excited about that. That's a big amount, so that should put us over the limit. So now we're at 38 and we're at 98, so it must not have kicked in for this percentages yet. It's because we've got more goals that we'll be getting to. So our goal is just to keep adding to the fund so we can keep doing great things for the community. So if you want to support Ortus financially, you can go to patreon.com/Ortus Solutions. And I mentioned earlier, there's other ways to support us too, liking our videos, subscribing to our YouTube channel or our podcast, helping with documentation and everything else. They all support us, so we appreciate all of you. But these guys are coughing up their hard-earned money to follow us, so we really got to say something special about that. So remember, we are offering annual memberships now. So if you pay for the year, you can save 10%. And as I mentioned, we have the bronze package that gives you those subscriptions, so the ForgeBox Pro and the CFCast subscription. But all levels of Patreon get their own little private forum on the community website. And we also get the profile badge on the Ortus community website too. So very cool. Hey Daniel, what's up? Thanks for joining us. Just in time for us to read all the names. So as I mentioned, I don't know who the new Emerald supporter is, so I'm going to have to get that back to you with that. But this is the list I had of right before this started. So we have John Wilson from Synatrix, Eric Hoffman, Gary Knight, Mario Rodriguez, Giancarlo Gomez, David Bellinger, Jonathan Perrett, Jeffrey McGee from Sunstar Media, Dean Maunder, Joseph Lamery, Don Bellamy, Jan Yannick, Laxmer Tirohadi, Calvin Stanton, Dan Carr, Jeremy Adams, Jordan Clark, Matthew Clemente, Daniel Garcia, Scott Steinbeck from Agri Tracking Systems, Ben Nadal, Mingo Hagen, Brett DeLine, Kai Koenig, Charlie Arehart, Jonas Eriksson, Jason Dager, Jeff McLean, Sean Oden, Matthew Darby, Ross Phillips, Edgardo Cabezas, Patrick Flynn, Stephanie Mungie, Stephen Wright, and Stephen Klotz. Kevin Wright, and Stephen Klotz. So thank you to all of our awesome Patreon supporters. We really appreciate it. It makes this podcast possible, and it gives us the options. Oh, and we have a name. So Mr. Gary Knight, he is now our Emerald supporter. So he was already pretty high up on that list, so he just bumped it up to even higher. So Gary, we really appreciate you. Thanks. Basically, you're really just making this possible for us to go out and do bigger and better things. And everybody at Ortus thanks you, and the community. So I think you might have just chipped off John Wilson as the top supporter. So come back next week and you'll find out who's top supporter. But again, thanks everybody for joining us. Everybody have a great week. We will have a co-host next week, so you'll get less of me and more of somebody else. Trust me, you will. But thanks everybody. And again, if you've got ForgeBox recommendations or hints and code for VS Code hints and tips, give us those recommendations, and we can keep this content fresh. And we'll see you guys all next week. Have a good one, everybody. Oh, Adam Cameron said Gary Knight was amazing All Black. Check out the All Blacks rugby team if you guys want to find out more about that. Have a good one, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Bye. Show notes for this episode can be found at cfmlnews.modernizeordie.io, where you can also subscribe to your favorite podcast player like Spotify or iTunes. We also have the link to YouTube to find more videos just like this. The music used in this podcast is under a royalty-free license from Sound.com and Blue Tree Audio.